Okay, there's a program called the Rubin Report where people of all political backgrounds are interviewed, mostly conservatives, actually. Dave Rubin, as a cultural critic and interviewer, is more like, say, Larry King, from what I've read, than some other interviewers, in that it's not so much about Dave debating people in playing point counterpoint or pushing back against the things that the guests say. It's more about hearing ideas from his guests. What do the guests think? What do the guests believe? What do the guests want to see happen in politics and culture and society? And today I have clips for you from an interview he did with a woman named Brigitte Gabriel, who is absolutely one of the most vile right-wing extremists that the conservative think tank industrial complex has ever produced. In a sort of less than Dave Rubin-like fashion, he actually interjected during this interview more of his own ideas and positions into the conversation. For example, suggesting that anti-George Soros conspiracy theories can't be anti-Semitic because, quote, everything he does is usually against Israel. But I'm sort of getting ahead of myself here. We're not there in this exploration just yet. What I want to focus in on here as we explore this interview with Brigitte Gabriel is, are the things Brigitte Gabriel is saying so outrageous that not calling them out must be denounced? When I last interviewed Dave Rubin, I gave him some examples where I, as an interviewer, would come prepared and say, hold on a second, that's not right. So one example I gave him is during an interview with David Horowitz some time ago. Horowitz said Obama is a communist. That's demonstrably untrue. It's silly, it's nonsense, and I'm not sure what the format gains by not simply pushing back against that and saying, well, what the hell are you talking about? Or maybe more politely, can you give some examples of socialist policy that President Obama has either proposed or enacted as president? So Dave and I spoke about that. Reasonable people can disagree about how to handle that depending on what you're trying to get out of the interview. But in this interview that I'm going to play pieces of for you that Dave Rubin did with Brigitte Gabriel, she repeated the endlessly debunked conspiracy theory that George Soros worked with the Nazis. And not only did Dave Rubin not rebut it, he actually appears to agree with it not once, but twice. Okay, let's start getting into this. And the point of all this is to show, first of all, for the people in our audience not familiar with this program, just to give you an idea of how these interviews with right-wing extremists go on the program, but also just to think about whether the positioning of Dave Rubin as the interviewer who just asked questions is giving us something of value when the guest says things as crazy as what Brigitte Gabriel said here.
In my book, I have a whole section about Soros and him funding the media. Mm-hmm. Soros right now has spent...
Doesn't that make you an anti-Semite if you talk about Soros? That's their new meme.
So Dave says their new meme is that talking about Soros is anti-Semitic. Of course, that's not true, right? I mean, if the idea is to seek nuance and explore ideas in detail, instead of this cartoonish sort of black and white way, we would say, you know, talking about Soros, criticizing Soros is obviously not inherently anti-Semitic, but criticizing Soros as a proxy to portraying Jews as conspiring to use their ill-gotten riches for the coordinated control of the political system or media or whatever, well, yeah, that's actually part of an anti-Semitic tradition that goes back hundreds of years and is part of thousands of years of oppression of Jews. But saying the meme is if you talk about Soros, you're anti-Semitic, it's pointless. It does absolutely nothing to really generate debate or any kind of battle of ideas. Let's continue.
I didn't even know he was Jewish until about a year ago.
Right, and everything that he does is usually against Israel. And
right, I mean, remember,
so
exactly, the height of stupidity.
So again, just blistering with logical fallacies. Soros does things against Israel, so therefore criticizing the criticizers of George Soros cannot possibly be anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you would think he sounds and talks like an anti-Semite, much more than me.
Right.
Remember, he is the one who worked with the doctors with the Nazis and actually had a smile when people asked him, how did you feel about going in and working with the Nazis against your own people? He said, well, you know, somebody had to do it, so I know I didn't see any problem with it.
Yeah, you're not making that up, by the way.
No. I mean, I watched his interview because I was very interested on what makes this man the way he is. I study my enemies.
Okay, so actually, Rubin agrees twice here with the Soros worked with the Nazis thing. He says, yeah, the first time, and then he says, you're actually not making that up the second time that Brigitte Gabriel keeps talking about this. The allowing of that debunked conspiracy theory to be recited, not only without pushback, but actually agreeing with it, is directly fomenting anti-Semitism. And what this relates to is that, listen, first of all, understand, George Soros was born in 1930, okay? He was 9 when the war broke out and 14 when the Nazis surrendered in 1945. You had to be 17 to join the SS. So number one, there's a picture that floats around supposedly of George Soros in an SS Nazi uniform. That literally could not have been him, and it wasn't. It's a guy named Oscar Groening. That's number one. The next layer of the conspiracy is, okay, fine, Soros wasn't in the SS, but he was a Nazi collaborator, and Glenn Beck and Alex Jones and Dinesh D'Souza were involved in spreading that one. And all of this relates to a 60 Minutes interview that they like to point to, which includes Steve Kroft asking George Soros about whether he was involved in the confiscation of property from Jews. And there's a moment where George Soros is completely taken aback by the question, and I encourage you to watch it. And it sort of seems like he said, yeah, I was involved in taking property from Jews. Of course, we now know the truth of this. And later in the interview, George Soros makes it clear that he doesn't regret anything he did because he didn't do anything. He saw this happening. And what happened was that George Soros had a caretaker during World War II who was forced by the Nazis to inventory, to make lists of properties that the Nazis seized from Jews. One time, George Soros went with that guy when that guy was taking inventory of properties. Okay, that's what happened. And to allow or even agree with the perpetuation of that conspiracy theory is absolutely and totally disgusting. And then it becomes truly dangerous. Literally pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And then Brigitte Gabriel goes further, pushing the idea that Soros personally approves the talking points of media. This is the conspiracy theory that Jewish rich dudes tell the media what to say. Take a look.
This is exactly how we end up with reporters who are no longer reporters. They are activists with a national platform, media platform, who get on television every night and basically spew the same talking political points approved by Soros. And they all say the same thing, whether it's the Huffington Post, the New York Times, the Associated Press, Reuters, MSNBC, CNBC, ABC, the same buzzword. And it's all coordinated.
I actually saw some comments about this on our YouTube channel. There was a day last week where my commentary about something related to immigration was similar to the commentary on the Young Turks. And people were saying Soros is dictating the talking points. David Pakman and the Young Turks are both getting their talking points from the same people. Obviously, this is insane. I've never had any contact with Soros. I don't watch the Young Turks. I just don't have time to watch any other shows. It might just be that a story came up and multiple media outlets came to the same conclusion. Battle of ideas, right? These are the ideas that were presented by Brigitte Gabriel, and they were not even remotely opposed. Then, lastly, and this is just, the lowest of the low, Brigitte Gabriel compares herself to Anne Frank. I don't even know that this part requires analysis.
See, I am the Anne Frank who lived to tell about it. Can you imagine if Anne Frank was alive and the Nazis were spreading worldwide and she just escaped the concentration camps and she came to the United States and Nazism started rising in the United States? She would be saying the same words that she said when she was alive. And in my case, I started speaking after the attacks on 9/11 on the United States. I started speaking about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and our national security.
This part is merely delusional. There's just no way in which Brigitte Gabriel is like Anne Frank. I actually recently reread Anne Frank's diary, and I'm seeing a bit of a gap between Anne Frank and Brigitte Gabriel. So let's see if we can categorize this a little bit. Interviewing conservatives like David Brooks or Thomas Sowell and hearing out their ideas, that's quite reasonable for an interview show like this one. I have no problem with that at all. Bringing on people like James Damore from the Google Memo or this guy named Carl Benjamin, he goes by Sargon on the internet, that's starting to get sort of fringe, but it's like, okay, if you don't want to push back about what they say, fine, it's kind of dumb, but don't push back against it. When you start bringing people on, like Stefan Molyneux and Brigitte Gabriel, first of all, as if they even have big ideas to present to us, right? They just spout this nonsense unopposed. These are extremist radicals. I have no problem with them being interviewed. I interview extremists, but it needs to be responsible platforming. And likewise, I used to have an invite to do Dave Rubin's show. I don't know if that invite is still open at this point. I don't know. If it were and I did that show, I would expect to be challenged on my views. I would not assume that I can show up and just say whatever I want with no critical analysis happening as it's taking place in real time. It's more a question of whether Dave Rubin feels okay doing an interview with someone like Brigitte Gabriel in this way. How does he rationalize handling it in this way privately? I get how you do it publicly, but I don't know how I'd live with myself privately if I did interviews in this way. It's like if I had Richard Spencer on and I said, oh, how interesting and novel and fascinating new ideas. Great. I couldn't do something like that. I couldn't live with myself. I also don't really understand why Rubin's funders, like Learn Liberty, the more libertarian-minded folks, I don't even know how they are okay with Brigitte Gabriel being allowed to come on and cite unsubstantiated, debunked anti-Semitic talking points with no challenge. Like, I don't even know how that helps their brand in their partnership, but that's not really my business. That's for them to figure out. Absolutely and completely off the rails. Send me your thoughts. We're on Instagram at David Pakman Show. Quick break. Back after this. One of today's sponsors is Skillshare, which is an incredible online learning community offering over 10,000 high-quality online courses on a huge variety of topics. First 500 who click the link under this video will get 2 entire months of totally free access to every single class that Skillshare offers. You'll have free access to courses on music, art, photography, business, computer programming, cooking, meditation, and everything in between. I think you'll have no problem finding courses that are perfect for you. Just took a really great class on graphic design, which I know nothing about, but I'm trying to learn. Our show is giving you 2 entire months of totally free access to every course Skillshare offers, risk-free. If you click the link under this video, you'll have 2 months to take classes on anything you're passionate about, classes taught by real people who share that passion. And after that, you can keep getting access to the entire site for less than $10 a month. Just click the link under this video to redeem your 2 free months of Skillshare, but hurry, it's only available to the first 500 who sign up.